Sure. Now it's better. Not while I was trying to put makeup on, but now it's or when I was trying to eat lunch, that was great. But now it's finally worn off. I can drink my coffee again. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 57 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. I'm your host, Kristen, and I'm here to talk to you about what else? Knitting. I will also be talking about all things knitting and yarn related, and maybe not so knitting and yarn related. So if you don't know me already, my name is Kristen Janik. I am a semi-retired knitting pattern designer, a knitting instructor, and an all-around knitting enthusiast. I am podcasting to you from my home in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. And if and when I am not knitting, you can find me sewing, vegetable gardening, watching Orioles baseball, drinking wine, but it is mostly about the knitting, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. All right, I want to start things right off with on and off the needles, but first I want to provide a little bit of context for this episode, which is that this morning I went to the dentist and I had a very old crown replaced. So I had a root canal done almost 20 years ago, I think. And that crown had finally given out. So she took the old crown out, filled in a cavity that was in there, and then put in a temporary crown. And now this entire part of my face is still numb. So my appointment was at 9:30 this morning. It is now 1:45, and it's just finally starting to wear off. So any odd facial movements, it's helpful that I can see my face. That way I can see if I'm doing anything weird with my mouth. But just for some context, that has happened. All right, on and off the needles, you can see that I have finished my mid-season sweater. This is a test knit that I did for Carina Spencer. So when you are watching this pattern should already have been released. This is the not cropped, I don't actually want to say cropped because I knit mine to a length in between cropped and high hip, which on me, because I'm short-waisted, actually falls to kind of the high hip point. Obviously I did the short sleeve or capped sleeve version. And I am pairing it today with a peplum shirt that I sewed for myself at the end of last year, and I can't remember what it's called, but I'll put that in the show notes. And despite the fact that it's a peplum shirt, because it has these wide vents, it actually fits pretty well. So I am really pleased with how this came out. I think it's going to be really cute for this sort of mid to late spring. Although to be honest, I was not wearing this already today. I put this on for the podcast because even though this past weekend it was about 80 degrees every day and sunny and low humidity, it's currently 53, cloudy and windy. So I had on a real sweater. But when we do get some spring weather, I think this is going to be pairing really cute with a bunch of floral springy things that are in my closet. So I knit, I want to say the size 2, and I think the recommended ease is around 10 inches. I think what I have here is about 8 inches, I want to say. And like I said, the pattern should have been released by the time you were watching this, so you can find all of those details, I'm sure, on the pattern page. Again, I made the cap sleeve version, and I did a custom slightly long armhole. I have, in order to complete the pattern, you actually are going, it's knit in pieces. So before you sew the side seams, you need to block it. And then once it is blocked and sewn together, you add the armhole trim. So that part hasn't been blocked and it's a little bit tight. But I did do a custom slightly longer armhole. So I think the recommended is 6 inches and mine is 7. And I also did the custom side vents. So I made 5-inch side vents so that this would pair with kind of cute spring dresses and some kind of floaty, airy tops that I have in my wardrobe for spring. I used Magpie Fiber Swanky Sock. This colorway is called Wicked Game. I was really playing yarn chicken at the end, and because of that, first of all, this was my fault. I bought 2 skeins of this yarn, even though the yarn is, I want to say 400 yards a skein, even though the test pattern specifically said like 900 something yards for what I wanted to do. I didn't pay attention to that. So this was entirely my fault. And also because I knit in between lengths. So you're actually, I mean, you can, there's no knitting police. You can knit your sweater however you want, but the sample sweater has a high-low hem that is longer in the back, but I didn't do that because I was playing yarn chicken. But other than that, I don't think I made any other changes, and I love this as a nice layering piece for spring. So again, this is the mid-season sweater. It is a pattern by Carina Spencer. By the time you are watching this, it should have been released, and I will include a link in the show notes so that you can find that. So actually something off the needles. I know, it's amazing. I feel like I should add also in here that I haven't had my coffee today because I went to the dentist at 9:30 in the morning and I didn't want to have coffee breath for the dentist. So I might be a little all over the place today. So that is the only thing that I have off the needles, but I have a couple of other projects that are close. And one of them is a design, so I'll be showing you a little bit later. But the other one is my Deren sweater. So again, this is, I've showed this a couple of times before. This is from Jacqueline Cieslak's Embody capsule collection. So this pattern in the book comes in various iterations. So there's a cardigan and a long sleeve pullover and a short sleeve cropped pullover and a vest, I think, as well. So this is the short sleeved cropped pullover. And I just have to finish up this sleeve, which would be a lot closer to being done if I hadn't started it with the wrong size needles and had to rip out most of the sleeve cap shaping. So that was annoying. And then I just need to do the trim around the neckline and it will be done. I am working mine with a sort of regular lace weight, like a 2-ply alpaca lace weight, held double with a floofy kind of mohair lace weight. And I really love this fabric. You can see, I hope, if I hide my face, it doesn't focus on me, you can see how fluffy it is. It's also so soft and just floaty and airy. And this is a sweater that uses one of my favorite techniques, which is the seamless set-in sleeve. I think set-in sleeves just look so nice and clean, but sewing them in is such a pain. So the seamless set-in sleeve, and if you watch my most recent tutorial, which I'm gonna do the link for here on 5 knitting books that you should have in your knitting library. One of those is Top Down, Reimagining Set-in Sleeves by Elizabeth Doherty, which explains this technique completely and is brilliant, and definitely you should get that. So seamless set-in sleeves are created by picking up around the armhole and then working a series of short rows. I should probably show this on the sleeve that's actually done. Working a series of short rows back and forth here to shape this sleeve cap. So, because if you were to just pick up and knit straight, you would end up with the top of your sleeve being much shorter than the bottom, because the top of the shoulder is here and the bottom of the armhole is here. You can do that with a drop shoulder because the shoulder is straight, but you cannot do it with the set-in sleeve. So you're still picking up around the armhole, but you're doing these back and forth short rows here. And she, in the book that I recommend, she explains the rate at which to do it. And this pattern is very well done. And that's done so that by the time you get all of these stitches that you've picked up down to the armhole, then you can just knit in the round and you won't end up with a sleeve that's too short on the top and longer on the bottom. So I love this. It looks so clean. Again, I'm gonna try to hide my face so it's gonna focus on the edge here where these stitches are picked up. Love, love, love this. So this is almost done. This is another thing that I think is gonna pair well with some spring stuff, at least until, I mean, this is gonna be really warm because this is alpaca and mohair and some silk. So definitely I'm not gonna be able to wear this in the summer, but as a light layer for the spring, or, you know, in places that had too much air conditioning, this is gonna be great. And when I tell you about my sewing, I'm gonna show you the companion piece for this. So I know I've showed you guys this before. This is the Embody Capsule Collection, and it includes, like I said, this sweater with a bunch of iterations, and then it has also this top dress tunic with a bunch of iterations called Wool Fork. And so I'm also working on a dress, the duress version of this, which looks something like this. And I will be showing you that in the sewing, but it's sort of the first thing I've created that is a hand knit piece specifically to go with a hand sewn piece. So more on that later. And then I did just barely start the next project for my Make 9. And so rather than do a separate segment, I'm just gonna put it here in on and off the needles because I haven't done very much. So here we go. So this is for the Gelato tank top, which is a pattern by Gabrielle Knits. And I started, and then I realized that this is where the needle tips were that I needed to do a sleeve on my Deren sweater. So it's just kind of hanging out here now. I did swatch. This is Magpie Fibers Equinox. So this is a linen silk blend. It is lovely and drapey. I did get gauge on the first try, thank goodness. But I think, if I recall, I automatically went up a needle size before I tried swatching, because the gauge, you know, once you've been knitting for a while, you can kind of look at the gauge in a pattern and look at your yarn and be like, no, that's just not going to happen. So I think this gauge was 6 stitches to the inch on a US 5. And I knew that that wasn't going to happen for me. I will say that this, you can see that I did my swatch in the round, which means for the parts of the pattern that are knit flat, I'm probably going to change my needle size to make sure that my gauge doesn't change. When you knit in the round, you knit a little bit tighter. Most people do. If you want to know more about swatching and gauge, you can check out my e-course, Swatch Master, which is now available as an independent study. Link in the description box below. But most people, when you knit in the round, you knit a little bit tighter because there's no purling, and most people's purls are bigger than their knits. So when you knit back and forth flat and you have that purling, you tend to knit a little bit looser. So I will probably change my needle size for the parts of the pattern that are worked flat. I'm going to be knitting a little bit looser when going flat, so I'm probably going to go down a needle size. And then we'll go back up to the 4 for the parts that are knit in the round. I can give you a quick look at the pattern. I did print it out, although the print quality is not great. All right, so tie my face and it should focus on there. So you can see cute tank top with sort of a V-neck detail. Going to be really cute in a linen silk, light and airy for the summer, which is maybe when I'll finish it. All right, that is all I have to show you for on and off the needles, and we are going to go right on ahead to Adelante because there's even more to show you. All right, Adelante, talking about upcoming patterns. I have an almost finished sweater. So this is the Querida pullover. I am working my sample in Kim Dye's yarn Crumpets, which is a 100% Falkland wool DK. I am on to sleeve number 1. This is a elbow, just below elbow length sleeve, so it should be pretty quick. And something I did that I don't actually usually do is that I went ahead and blocked the body of this sweater because I wanted to make sure that it looked like my shoulders were going to be, once they were blocked, were going to be dropping down low enough for the drop shoulder. And it looks pretty good. I'm going to have this pattern ready for Maryland Sheep and Wool. I'm going to release this the Friday before Maryland Sheep and Wool. I'm going to offer the sweater if Kim wants it in her booth because she's going to be there. I will offer it to her, so may or may not be in her booth. If it's cold, which I mean, it's really too early, but I did check the weather, the 10-day, and it's looking not great. But it's really a little too early. I might even be wearing this sweater, so we shall see. This is a bottom-up drop shoulder, and it has, rather than using short rows, I've used this slip stitch pattern in the center. And because you're slipping stitches, it naturally pulls the front and the back of the sweater upward. So you get some shape without having to do the extra work of adding short rows. It also has just this sort of simple cable here. And the back is basically the same, but without the cable. So it has this nice wide neckline. I have not done the neckline trim, so there will be a little bit more neckline trim. And then just below the shoulders, I transition away from the separate stitch patterns and do everything in that slip stitch pattern. So the pattern has been sent to my TE, my tech editor, and I need to finish 2 sleeves, do a neckline trim, take some photos, and then I think we'll be on our way. Sure, now it's better. Not while I was trying to put makeup on, but now it's or when I was trying to eat lunch, that was great. But now it's finally worn off. I can drink my coffee again. Like, when you put like eyeshadow on and you have to on the brush and like one side of my mouth, which was like, no, I'm not doing that. And it looked totally ridiculous, but now it's fine. I don't think I could have waited because I thought my husband was gonna be able to pick the kids up from school, but he can't. So I've got to get the podcast in and everything before it's time for that. Sorry, tangent. So Querida pullover, it is coming. This yarn is amazing. It is really soft. I have not worked with Falkland wool before. It is very soft. It is not a super structured yarn. It is a little bit of a loose ply, and it's giving again, hide my face, and you can see some fuzz kind of along the top there, so it is just a little bit fuzzy. So this is delightful, and I have really enjoyed working with this wool throughout this project, but I am also very much looking forward to getting it done because it was supposed to be done much earlier this year, but since pattern design is now sort of just a, what do the youths say, side hustle these days and not my full-time job, I had to prioritize other things. But that is coming, and lots more information about that in the next couple of weeks. And then the other thing that I am kind of actively working on is that a few years ago I released a pattern called Uraka, and I will go ahead and throw a photo in here. Oh no, wait, now I know how to do the slide thing, so I will go ahead and throw a photo in here. This is a DK weight raglan t-shirt that is used magpie fibers solstice, But the Solstice has been discontinued. The Solstice was like a wool cotton blend, but the Solstice has been discontinued, and the pattern needed to be updated for some additional sizes. So as I was kind of playing around with that, I thought it'd be great really to make this a real warm weather knit, because as much as I like wool cottons, there's really a very small window of time, at least here in Maryland, that you can wear a short sleeve wool cotton t-shirt. So most of the year, it's either cold enough that you want a real sweater, or it's hot and you don't want any wool. So I decided not only I wanted it to be a warm weather fiber or content, but I also wanted it to be just a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit drapier and airier. So I went ahead and got some yarn to do that. So this is Ritual Dyes Undying. So this is their organic cotton and linen base that is a fingering weight. I wanted to keep the stripes that were in the original pattern. I might kind of play with them a little bit. I actually myself am not really a super stripe person, but when I do stripes, I kind of like finer stripes. So I might play with that a little bit. And I think this is going to be really nice to make this a much more warm weather project. I don't know when that's going to happen. It is already almost May. Given that the pattern, my idea is that even though the pattern was originally written for DK weight yarn, if I want it to be more drapier, need that coffee. If I want it to be more drapey, kind of floaty and airy, I can probably just work at the same gauge with the fingering weight yarn, assuming it doesn't create a fabric that is see-through. So I will certainly be testing that theory out in the near future. And if I can work at the same gauge, that's much less of a problem. I don't have to redo gauge or anything. So the original pattern, I think, maybe had 6 or 7 sizes. So now I'm doing usually at least 10 sizes in a pattern. So there will be some more pattern math to be done. And there will probably be some adjustments to be made. Even working at the same gauge with the fingering weight yarn, lengths probably are going to differ. So that will be some adjustments. But hopefully you will be seeing this summer. As you can see, I haven't even wound the yarn yet, but tomorrow is Take Your Kids to Work Day, and we told my oldest son he could go to work with us, but neither of us is currently going anywhere. I'm a freelance translator, so I always work at home, and my husband is still not back at the office yet for unknown reasons. So I think winding yarn might be a good task for him to take care of tomorrow, so he can help mom out with her side hustle. I haven't done a sketchbook segment in a while because I'm not actively designing as a full-time job, and the last few patterns I have released have been accessories, so not so much sketching was involved. But I have been playing with some ideas. I got a couple of calls for submissions, which, if you're not familiar with that, yarn companies or magazine publishers or what have you will put out a call for designers to submit ideas for an upcoming issue or collection. So this is the time of year when you get the calls for like next winter. So I got a couple of those, and really was playing around with some ideas for them. So I wanted to show you 2 things that are in my sketchbook. Both of them will probably eventually see the light of day, but whether that will be as an independent design or with a publisher remains to be seen. One of them has been submitted to the publisher, but no news yet, so we'll see. Okay, so the first one is this kind of sweater vest / slipover concept. So since I tested this for Carina, I've really been interested in the idea of creating sort of a garment that is designed to be worn over other garments. So that is not necessarily loose fitting all over, but has some elements that make it easy to layer, like longer armholes, side vents, and things. So this was a concept that I came up with for kind of a slip over vest that I am slightly obsessed with. So I'm really have my fingers crossed that it's going to get accepted, but if not, I think you'll be seeing this in the fall. And I did swatch for it, to swatch for design submissions. I memean, you have to swatch anyway, but had I not been submitting it, I probably wouldn't have tackled the swatching part just yet. But I'm really happy with the way this swatch came out. A little close up. So you can see I've paired these sort of 1x2 cables with a big center cable panel that splits at the top. And then in my sketch, this is to be filled in with kind of a 1x1 rib that would take the place of an actual V-neck. It would be filled in with this 1x1 rib that would then go up into like a mock turtleneck collar. So you can see there. And when it does that, these cables on the sides kind of gradually spread out, but you maintain the cabling. I love this. I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be a popular concept with publishers, so we will just see, you know, a lot of more traditional garments are usually what you see, but I just love this idea. And I don't think that we get enough sweater vests and sort of things that are designed for layering. Maybe I'm just thinking about that now more because I'm doing sewing, and so I'm trying to create a more intentional wardrobe where my sewing and my knitting go together and complement each other. So maybe that's why it's in my head more, but I just like the idea of pieces, you know, that aren't just cardigans, but, you know, other sort of styles of garments that can be paired together. So that is the first thing. And again, I did already submit that to a publisher, so that is further along than the other one. The other one, I really want to do an all over cable sweater, but I find difficulty in pairing up cables and getting sort of the right balance of smaller cables and textured stitches and then big cables. You know, sometimes I see other people that are, you know, other designs that are great. They just have that right balance. And I personally find that a little tricky. So I'm still working on the cable part, but I did sketch out sort of the shape I want for this cardigan. So this would be a seamless set-in sleeve with these kind of slightly, what are they called? Bishop sleeves, I guess, that are bigger at the bottom and the top, but kind of cinch in at the cuffs. It will have pockets. It would kind of be an open front, like not really a closure here. You could put a pin in it if you wanted a closure. It would have sort of a high collar. And it would be actually a saddle shoulder set-in sleeve. So I like the idea of creating a saddle that is sort of twisted rib or twisted rib that kind of splits off and then opens into the sleeve, so that you end up with kind of a line running down either side. It's hard to obviously it'll be easier when I have some sketches and better sketches and swatching, but I really like the shape here. So it would be like a curved hem. You can see it kind of cuts away, and then underneath or in the back would be a curved hem, and it's supposed to be a long piece. So I really like the shape that I've sketched out here. I need to work on, how do I want these? I want it to be lots of cables. How do I get them to blend together and look not look overwhelming, have that right balance. Also, you know, to not just look like I grabbed a Stitch dictionary and threw some cables in an existing sweater shape, that it all looks like very cohesive. So I have a submission in mind for this, a particular publisher. I've got less than a week now to kind of figure out how I want these cables to go into the sweater and then to swatch. So we'll see what becomes of that. But I'm just, I'm really invested in this sweater shape that I've created, and I hope that that is going to work out to be something. And that is your peek inside my sketchbook for this episode. News and events. Maryland Sheep and Wool. I'm so excited. We are, by the time you see this, just a week away from Maryland Sheep and Wool and all of the fun stuff that goes with it. I will be at Maryland Sheep and Wool on Saturday. I plan to be there for a good long time because it has been, I have not been obviously to Maryland Sheep and Wool since 2019. It was the last time it was held in person, and I am very much looking forward to it. I hope I will be able to spend a good amount of time there and see some familiar and maybe some new faces. Is there any yarn that I need to buy? No, but I'm sure I will buy. As I mentioned, you might perhaps see the Querida pullover or some of my other designs that have made their way out into the wild. You might spy some of them in booths, and if you do, let me know. And I definitely need to pet some sheep. It's been a long time since I've gotten to pet some sheep and goats and bunnies and alpacas and all of that good stuff. I'm really, really fingers crossed for some good weather. It doesn't have to be warm, just that it's not raining is really all I'm hoping for. I mean, if it's not warm, that's actually better for all of us knitters to wear our sweaters. But rain really, really is tough to deal with at Maryland Sheep and Wool because the fairgrounds they turn into a swamp. So fingers crossed for no rain and not frigid weather, but not super hot either. There are lots of events going on around Maryland Sheep and Wool. So there is the Yarn Centric pop-up, which is in, I believe, Mount Airy, Maryland, which is relatively close to the fairgrounds for Maryland Sheep and Wool. They're both is Mount Airy in Howard County? Or is it in Montgomery County? I think it's in Howard County. So they're both in Howard County. That is on Friday. I am hoping, depending on what's going on with kids in school and pick up and drop off and work, hoping to be there on Friday. The Knot House in Frederick, Maryland is having their pop-up that weekend. I'm hoping to stop in there. And then Magpie Fibers is opening their new storefront, their flagship store, I guess. So they have Magpie Market, which is in downtown Frederick, and has yarn, but not small, but I'd say maybe a third of the shop has yarn, and then the rest is other crafty things and stationery and pencils and notebooks and cards and all those kinds of things that I just love. So they have that, but this I think is going to be just yarn and a place where they can showcase their production process and things like that. And that is having its grand opening that weekend. And so I'm also hoping to stop by there. And everything that I just said is either Friday or Saturday because Sunday is Mother's Day. I guess I could have told my family I would rather spend Mother's Day doing Sheep and Wool stuff, but they seemed excited about planning something, so planning a brunch. So I will not, to my knowledge, be doing any fibery things on that Sunday, but Friday and Saturday I hope to be making my way through some of the various events that are happening around Maryland and around Maryland Sheep and Wool, and I hope to see you at some of them. Please do say hi. I know sometimes people will recognize you from social media and they'll want to say, oh, hey, media peruana, but then they don't know how to pronounce that. And, or they just can't remember my real name. So it's media peruana, and my real name is Kristen. I will answer to either of those. So if you do see me, please say hi. I'm really looking forward. I am not, in general, a very extroverted person, but it has been so long since we have gotten to do any kind of in-person events that I am really hoping to get over my own shyness and to say hi to people I recognize, and I hope that you will do the same. Another kind of news and event that I wanted to briefly tell you about is the new project that I'm going to be showcasing here on my YouTube channel. I did do a whole separate video about this, which you can check out, but that is just to say that I'm going to be recreating this iconic sweater. This is Sir Paul McCartney. This photo was taken in 1970 by his wife in Scotland. I have always wanted to recreate this sweater. And after spending way too much time watching dress historians on YouTube recently, mainly Bernadette Banner and Abby Cox, definitely check them out if that's something that interests you. I decided I was going to finally tackle my own historical project. I think vintage is a better word. So this photo is 50 years old. That gets into the vintage era. And I'm going to be showcasing this here on YouTube. This is going to be separate from the podcast, so if you don't care about it, you don't have to watch it. But if you do, make sure you stay tuned for that. I'm just going to be doing videos, vlogs here and there. I do expect this to be a long-term project. It's not something I'm going to update every week. But when I have news, I will be sharing it here, and you guys can watch me attempt to recreate this sweater that I love so much. All right, sewing. I always like to leave this section for the end, just in case you're not into the sewing stuff. But I have been sewing, and I finished my Easter dress, and I will go ahead and, oh yeah, I can do that thing now. Ta-da! This is the Kimmy dress pattern from Seamwork. And it was like 50 degrees and windy on Easter too, and I was cold. Because this is a rayon, a rather thin rayon that I purchased by accident. But the dress turned out pretty well, I think, and was very comfortable. I will give it that. So this was my first time sewing any non-cotton or linen fabric. That's not true. Is it? I guess so. So this, at any rate, it was my first time sewing with rayon, or a pure rayon. I have used a rayon linen blend in my metamorphic dress. That was much more cooperative. This stuff was really tricky. It was tricky to cut. It's very slippery. It doesn't want to stay still. And that is also true when you're sewing it. So this was, the dress pattern itself is relatively straightforward. There's not a whole lot of fancy stuff going on here. It doesn't have sleeves. It does have pockets, but there's nothing out of the ordinary with the pockets. They're kind of the same kind of pockets I've put in several other pieces since I started sewing about a year ago. There is an elastic waistband, which if you're not familiar with using elastic, it's just kind of fiddly. It doesn't, you have to like stretch it out and hold it in place so it doesn't snap back in. And I probably could have gone a little smaller with the elastic in the waist, and it seems like the opening for the elastic that I put in, which I tried, to follow the instructions, but again, the fabric is very slippery, so some of the fabric came out different sizes than it was supposed to. So it seemed like the space that it was there for the elastic was actually a little bit too big, because the elastic keeps trying to flip itself over. I could probably solve that by putting some stitches in to kind of tack the elastic at the sides. But I am not, you know, like I said, I've only been doing this for a little bit, so I'm not sure if that's a wise idea. I mean, you want the elastic to be able to stretch, and if it's sewn, it can't, at least it can't stretch on the sides. It could still stretch, you know, in the back and in the front, so I'm not sure about that. It's relatively easy to get it to flip back into place. I created my own bias tape for this project using leftover scraps from this, which I thought was really kind of complementary to the pattern on the dress. And then I also used it to create the ties that are on the shoulders. The cords I made are really not long enough. They're not long enough to actually tie into a bow so that they don't fly back into the shoulder. And it's just, you're supposed to pull them, which helps gather the top of the shoulder, and then you tie them and then it stays gathered. Mine weren't long enough to tie, so my shoulders kind of kept coming ungathered, and I just need to sit down and make new longer cords, and they're easy enough to thread through. So perhaps I will do that before the next time that I wear it. So this was a fun project. It was a challenge, again, not because of the pattern, but because of the fabric. I don't know if I'm going to be in a hurry to use a rayon fabric again. I actually do have another one that I was planning to use for something for the summer, but it feels a little more hardy. It doesn't feel as slippery. It has, maybe it's like a crepe or a viscose crepe. So it's like the same material, but the processing is different. It doesn't feel as slippery slidey. So I'm kind of fingers crossed that that's going to be a little bit more cooperative. And the project I'm working on now that I alluded to earlier in the podcast is my wool fork dress. Oh, well, good, it's inside out. Well, that gives me a chance to show you. This is my first time doing French seams. So this is definitely some extra work, but it certainly is neat and tidy. I don't have an overlock machine. I just have a regular old sewing machine. So when I usually am trying to finish my raw edges, I'm either, you know, using pinking shears, which is not all that effective, or a zigzag stitch, which I guess works, but doesn't look that neat. So these French seams, they encase your raw edges, and they just look so much neater on the inside of your dress, I guess, if that's something you're concerned about. All right, so I'm gonna try to show you as much of this dress as I can. This dress has had its own issues, and the primary issue is I am using this crinkle cotton, and it's actually the exact same fabric that she uses for one of the sample dresses in the book. ¿Dónde estás? Oh, here it is. So this is the exact same crinkle cotton that she uses. And the cotton itself is not a problem. The problem is the crinkles. And that's that some parts of the fabric are like very crinkly and some are less crinkly, and it keeps kind of growing and shifting. So I cut it out, and like I cut it the same way I always do, which is to fold the fabric and cut a double layer. And somehow, like, one of my back pieces ended up like 4 inches longer than the other one at the hem. I don't know. So that has been a challenge. I recut the hem. So as you can see here, it has like an asymmetric hem, sort of longer on the sides. And so the other thing was that I adjusted the pattern to be shorter, and I raised it about 2 inches at the little mark where it says. Unfortunately, that kind of got into the bust darts, and so I had to do some finagling, but they actually, it was less problematic than I thought. I was able to figure that out. But this thing, it just keeps growing. So this looks just way too big at this point. I shortened it 2 inches and it's still coming, and obviously you cannot see, but it's still coming down much longer than I wanted. And it is really uneven. I can see it just looking at it from here that it is not hanging evenly on both sides. Now I picked this to be my floaty, airy, wear all summer dress, you know, not to wear out to like fancy parties, not that I go to any fancy parties, but not to, you know, not to be anything formal, just to be something casual and comfortable that I could wear in the summer, because it gets so uncomfortable here. So it's not that big of a deal, but at the same time, I'm a little disappointed. I don't know if I did wash the fabric first. I did not press the fabric first because I thought, well, then all the crinkles are gonna come out, and it's a crinkle fabric. I want crinkles, so perhaps that was a mistake. I don't know. I did manage to put the pockets on. I did recut the hem. I did have success with the French seams. I even managed to adjust the length with the bust darts there. So overall, I think it was a good learning experience, but I don't know ultimately how it's going to turn out. I did, as I said earlier, specifically make this to go with the Deren sweater, the crop sweater, and I think they'll be a cute pair. So what's left here is to do the facings on the armholes and the neckline, and to hem the bottom. And I mean, it is really light and airy, and I'm sure it'll be very comfortable. I'm not sure it will be very flattering because I have no idea what size it's going to come out. I like sort of the style. Oh, I also do need to do the straps to go around it. I would like a much shorter version of the dress. And like I said, I shortened it to 2 inches, and that was not really very much. And I really couldn't shorten it more than that without getting into the bust darts and making a problem for myself. I'm sure somebody who is good at sewing could do it without any problem. So what I'm kind of wondering is if it would have been smarter to just make a longer tunic instead of trying to make a shorter dress. But I have the pattern, you know, I can make as many iterations of this as I want, so we will see how it turns out, and I will be able to show you that in the next episode of the podcast. All right, I'm going to skip the Chatterbox segment today because this is already a long episode with lots of stuff in it. Thank you so much for joining me. We're episode 57 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. Thank you so much to my Patreon patrons who help keep the podcast and the whole Media Peruana Knits YouTube channel up and running. So if you are interested in supporting the podcast and the channel and getting some perks and freebies and behind the scenes sneak peeks, you can find more information at patreon.com/mediaperuana. Show notes with links to everything that I've talked about in this episode can be found at mediaperuana.com/Hilo-Stitch. Here on YouTube, if you can like, subscribe, leave a comment, share with your friends, all of those good things that help expand the reach of the channel, and I greatly appreciate. If you are looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you next time.